Hello, in this tutorial I want to explain how to use my maze setup. So I'll just be building a simple maze and showing how it works. So first of all, let's go to a hidden layer. Here I will build the maze object itself. It will actually be just an object, it can be an empty, with certain properties to it, and I'll use parent-child relations to build up all the different tiles and rooms that I want to have in my maze. But for starting point, let's start with building my maze. And I need several properties for that. So in the main object of my maze I have the size of my maze in the X direction, in the Y direction, also in the Z direction, but in this case I'll just stick to a two-dimensional maze. I want to have a horizontal grid size, and yeah, if you have a three-dimensional maze you will also need to know the height of your maze. These are all integers. So let's start with a maze of 10 by 10 by 1. Let's just use 3 as a grid size. In this case the grid height doesn't really matter that much. So this is my main maze object. Yes, so I'll be needing some corridors as tile set actually. So let's add something. Okay, I'll just use a basic cube. So it was a scale of 3. So now I have a tile of 3 by 3. Let's call it tile 1. Can just make it a cube. Okay, so that will be my tile. To start with, let's give it an offset so you can see how it all looks. I'll parent that one to my main maze object, and I will give these two properties. And one, it will be a corridor, and then I have integer types for 0, that's a dead end, straight corridor, a corner, stuff like that. And each tile has an occurrence. So for example, if I have two tiles of the same type, I can give one an occurrence of 5 and the other an occurrence of 1, and then we'll get the one with the occurrence of 5 a lot more in my maze. So yeah, this is part of my tile, and of course I want to give it some walls so that it's actually a okay. So this will just be my basic wall. I'll just parent this to my tile. It doesn't have to have any properties, it's just part of the tile itself. Okay, so in total I will need 5 tiles. So I have a straight corridor and a dead end, stuff like that. Okay, so I'll just Okay. Duplicate. Okay, so the first tile, so tile at corridor integer type 0 will be a dead end. So the default orientation is in the X direction it's east, Y direction is north, then the straight tile will look like this. So if you have your orientation of your tile wrong, you can get some straight, then the tiles won't be aligned when you build a maze. If you really did it wrong then and you want to keep it like that, you can give it a property to the tile, but for now I'll just leave it as is. This will be corridor type 2. Then I have this one that should be 3, and of course a crossing itself will be corridor type 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Yeah, just for show I'll just add a second corridor of type 1. I'll give this an occurrence of 5, and let's just give the walls a different color. Then you can see what it does in the end. Oh. It only applies to one of the cubes. So the straight corridors will mostly be blue, because 5 out of 6 times you will have a blue corridor. So that's it for the corridors itself. But in my maze I don't want to have only corridors, I also want to be able to add rooms and stuff. So for that I'll just make a room. I'll base it on a few tiles, doesn't have to be exactly like that, but let's give it a weird shape as well. Okay, so I'll want to have an L-shaped room. I want to have the option possible that there will be openings here. Of course, for the whole setup here, it should not be parented to my main maze object, so clear the parent relations, and I'll just make this one my main room object. So the room has different properties, so I don't need these properties anymore, because these were specific for tiles. So this is actually my room, so this is the floor plan of the room. The room itself will be again based on an empty object, so I'll just add it here. So I'll have to parent the floor plan to the room object, and the room object will have the following properties. It's a room. There is a minimum number of this type of room, a maximum number, so the rooms will be added randomly to the maze. Up to the maximum number you indicated. And this particular room will be my starting point in my maze, so I will give this room the property start point. So there the maze will start. You need at least one room with the start point property, start room property. So if you put in the wrong property, the whole script won't work. So the room property will be parented to the maze object again. So I'll call this room 1. So the room has these properties. Actually, these are all integers. So yeah, I'll just have one room of this type. Also, the way the maze is generated, first I randomly distribute the rooms over the available squares, and then I will start with the rooms with the lowest room number. So if you have multiple rooms, it's best to give the bigger rooms a lower number, so they will be added first. And then, yeah, if you want to add a large room later on, well, there's all small rooms in there. You might not have enough space. Then it will be difficult to randomly generate your maze. But that won't be a problem here, because I will only have one room. Okay, so Blender doesn't know the shape of my room, so for that I will add empties in each part of the maze that each part of the room that corresponds to a corridor space. So it will start with I'll just use empties for that. So the first of these locations within the room will be parented to, again, my room object. It will have the check and start cell property. And then I'll have some more of these spots, which I will parent to this one. So now I have this L shape for my shape of my maze, and Blender will try to figure that one out. Still, you also need to define if, for example, this part of my room has openings or walls on which sides. So I used some code for that. So if I have a barrier, then I will start with the B, so then there will be no opening whatsoever. So at least it's up and down you have a barrier, because that's the floor and the ceiling. For this particular one I also have a barrier on the east side. Well, the north and the south side are open, and in this case I can decide that on the west side I want to have the option of either putting a wall there or having an opening there. So I have to do this for all those nodes within my room. So then then my maze script will interpret this whole room, how it should look like, and it should all work in the end. So I'll also later make description of which properties actually do what, so then I still have to make a reference document for that, but that will come in the end. Okay, and then it's the last of my nodes in my room. Yeah, so I was talking about having either walls or openings there. If you look at the room now, there are all openings on the locations where there can potentially be a wall. And actually, yeah, I want to have a nice wall or gate there, depending if it's an opening or if it's a closed spot. So what I can do is I can make a wall object. So in this case, a wall object will need to have several properties. Let me have a look at which ones I actually used for that one. I think it was just a wall. So it's a wall. It also has an occurrence, so I can use 4 different types of walls within one room. And it needs to have an offset, so how far from the side of the tile the wall actually is. So in this case it's a wall of 1 by 1, so it should be 0.5 if I'm correct. Let's make the walls also another color so we can see later on where the walls are placed. Same thing I can do for gates. So it's also again parented to my maze object, no, to the room object. Oh. So the gate will be green. Let's just make it a no collision thing. So this one is a static box and this one is a no collision, so the green walls we should be able to pass. I think that is it actually for the maze setup, so how to build my maze. So it's basically a main maze object with some rooms defined and the tiles itself. And now we actually want to build a maze with this. So then I'll need to include a script as well. So you'll see that the maze object and other related stuff is on an inactive layer, and on the active layer I will just add the following items. So I need to add some scripts here, actually 2 to be precise. I already loaded some scripts here in the Blender, so this will be the script that will be interpreting my whole maze object. But yeah, I don't have to know the details here, I can just use it. So I have a script maze generator dot create maze that will actually create a maze, and I didn't add dynamic objects yet, but to make sure that they behave nicely and don't fly out of the maze, I also have another script to work with dynamic objects. So then this is basically the whole logic of it. Oh, I also have to, of course, add my maze object here. So from this script on, the maze generator create maze, it will know which object actually is my maze, which is this one. Yep, I didn't want to hide it. Yeah, and then based on this one, based on the parent-child relations and the properties of each of the children, I should be able to create a maze with this. Let's see if it's already doing something. Yes, so if I now play the game, there is a maze added somewhere. So like this. So yeah, you can see the room there. And some of the corridors. And then we need a player, of course, to walk around in the level. Yeah, so for that I'll just make a simple player object. I'll just add it here. Let's just make a cube. So this will be the player object. And yes, so it will have to respond to some keyboard actions. So up, down, left, right. I'll just make it a very simple motion. Control. Yeah, so it has to move the object. So it goes up, down. So let's make this the plus Y. Location. It's all global for now. Left and right, so that's minus X and X. So that's for this part. And then I have to add one script also to my player object, which is actually to update the maze to my new position of my player. So if when my player moves around the level, it will need a particular script to run, so it's using my maze generator dot update, which will be running continuously. And then here I probably need to have the maze object name. Not sure if it's this actually was set up. I think this should work. Just to make sure, I'll call this one my maze object. Let's add a light to it as well. And so this will be my player. And yeah, so I'll have to add that one when I add my maze. So actually it's one thing, so because I don't want to add my player each time I build my maze, I need to do a bit more smarter how to add my player. So just using an add object will not completely work, so I have I'll just add my spawn point here. Nope, I want to add it in the room. I'll just be an empty where I spawn my player. So I spawn it with a always sensor, and instead of just using a controller, I have a Python script connected to my spawn object, of a spawn actuator. So here I'll add my object and I'll just add my player here. And let's see if this actually works or not. It will be an exciting moment if I didn't mess anything up. And also my room is looking a bit weird. Ah, yeah. Made the offsets too large, I think. Or is it? Yes, that looks much better already. But then I'm still missing my player object, and that's probably because I did not parent my spawn point of my player yet. So it's not parented to anything, so... Okay. Yes, so now I have my player inside the maze, and the maze will be updating. So the last thing I'm missing is my camera, of course, but we'll have to follow my player. Okay, so when it's added, oh, it's not, it's the scenes, I think. Scene, set camera, so like this. Okay, now hopefully it all works. Oh, I made the arrows wrong, but otherwise I can now run around in my maze. So that's actually it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to show. So you can see that the maze is added and removed automatically. And if you go back to my room, you can see that the spaces where I made the gates, they're green, and the walls are added here at the impossible terrains. So that's it. So that's how you build a maze in half an hour. Okay, thanks for watching.